Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Agro 35 analysis. Chad versus Raw Dog for the Xbox 145-pound title in the main event. Ed Cobby versus Liam for the Xbox 155-pound title in the co-main. Such rich history between these four competitors. The main event, of course, being a rematch in the co-main. You've got Liam, the 8-0 longest win streak ever in Agro history. I'm incredibly excited. Jamie, how do you feel about this week's card?
Couldn't be more happy. It's a standard aggro event that we put on every week, so you can't beat it.
Could not agree more. And again, two champs defending their titles potentially for the first time. Chad recently taking the belt off of Fro, and Ed Cobby stealing it away from Stan. So I think that there's such stakes this week higher than they've really been in the last couple weeks, I believe. You know, again, in the main event, we do have a rematch. Raw Dog having a bit of a career resurgence recently, stringing together back-to-back wins, placing himself in title contention. And he's wanted this rematch ever since, of course, he lost to Chad. And then Liam wants that belt back in the co-main. I just think rich history. Rich history.
I agree. Nothing better than a champ coming back to reclaim his throne and a guy wanting to get the better over to someone who's already beat him.
Talking about the former champ, let's get right into the analysis. Liam, one of the biggest things that we have to talk about with Liam, of course, 8-0, phenomenal, really hasn't shown any weaknesses up until this point. A couple of things that we wanted to mention was the takedown defense. I mean, it is phenomenal. He's so defensively aware as well. You can see here in this exchange with Jimmy that he's just constantly moving. He's active. We'll say that sway back is a staple of his sort of striking repertoire. I think what it does is it unlocks combinations, right? You see him sway back just to feint that uppercut or sway back. See right there. Then you see goes to the body, goes back up top, goes downstairs. It's all over the place with the former champ. Liam, you can see he's just going to pound out Jimmy right here for the TKO. Honestly, clinical. Completely clinical. Jamie, what do you think about Liam's performances?
Well, that clip speaks for itself, really. He's just absolutely brilliant. The sway back uppercut and the double dig to the body is a huge staple in this game. And although it's very readable, obviously everyone knows it's going to come, but he doesn't counter the strike that he knows you're going to throw. He guesses the strike. He just knows it's coming. He picked up his reads in the first minute of that fight, in the first round, and then he knows exactly when to throw that uppercut. It's unbelievable how he timed it so well.
Complete tactician on the feet with Jimmy. But we see in his fight with Bobby Light, there may have been a little bit more of a pushback, a resistance, if you will, from the tiger-clad competitor. You can see here Liam kind of just testing, again, moving, going to the body. But again, he gets caught right there. You see Bobby Light's finding some chinks in the armor of Liam, pushing him back even. Again, that sway back uppercut dig to the body is there all day and all night long.
I love that little push kick he uses, the little front kick to the body. It's beautiful.
Really, and it's what that does is obviously it just completely gauges the distance, right? Something like a sway back uppercut, it doesn't give you a lot of read, but when it lands, it's impactful.
He just knows exactly what strike to throw it is at the right time. He very rarely gets caught. I don't think we've seen him rocked more than once, if that, in aggro, in his 8 fights. He's just unbelievable. It's a beautiful
and it's diversity. Diversity, too. I mean, he's not just throwing the sway back uppercut or hook spamming. He's mixing it up. You can see their little corkscrew uppercut with the lead hand, a 1-3. I mean, it's really kind of a mixed bag, which I think plays into the unpredictability of his striking game. You don't see guys figuring him out because he just isn't something that you can put down to one thing, right? This game's all about reading your opponent, right? This game's all about trying to figure out what they're going to throw next. Liam very rarely is able to be read completely.
I agree. I think Liam is probably the most unreadable fighter in aggro, especially on Xbox. I think his stand-up's probably the best on Xbox that we currently have on the roster. But I think he loves to stand in the phone booth, and I think Cobby prefers the range. So I think Liam's path to victory is to stand in that phone booth, keep Cobby in boxing range, and let his hands go.
It absolutely is going to come down to a who can implement their game plan first. As we saw, right? Just like you mentioned, Jamie, in the fight with Stan just a couple weeks ago, Ed had some great distance management in the first round, right? Dictating the pace is what this guy did in that fight. He was so effective at it, using some body kicks, staying at range, moving in with a sort of weird chopping left hook. It's just interesting movement out of Ed. And obviously you can see they're moving back as Stan's moving forward, sort of a toe for toe, if you will.
Yeah, I believe this is what won him the fight. I think the distance management he used in round one was eventually what gassed Stan out. I just don't know how. I think Stan wasted a lot of stamina trying to get into range.
And that may be kind of an answer to Liam potentially, right? Stan is a dangerous competitor in his own right, lethal on the feet. And you can see Ed found an answer, right? He was able to find a path to victory.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I will say one critique that I could have in this fight against Stan is there's a couple defensive holes that Ed showed to us, right? Several instances of catching a body kick and then eating a knee to the face to the point where it had rocked him several times. And that's not really what you want to have against a guy like Liam. You don't want to have instances where your defense is kind of exposed, because a guy like Liam going to take advantage. He's going to completely blow the lid off on the defense if he can get through.
Yeah, I feel like.
Now, one thing I did want to mention with the fight with Stan is the stance switching as well. This isn't something that you see too often with Liam's competitors. A guy who is effective both orthodox and southpaw. Ed has displayed tremendous ability in both stances. Maybe that'll help him this Saturday.
Yeah, I believe it will. There's nothing better than a fighter who can switch stance. We've seen it with Dosso against Ganja when he got chewed. His lead leg got chewed up. He switched to southpaw and ended the fight. Switching stance is what being able to choose fight in any position is what makes a fighter great.
Absolutely. And as you can see here, the closing minute of round two between Stan and Ed, some creative striking that's unlocked by this pressure. Ed is like a wet blanket on Stan right now, mixing up to the body with that knee, draining Stan's stamina, and then coming in with some unorthodox strikes, right? That jumping elbow, the sort of kicks in boxing range, not stuff that you would see out of someone who is pressuring in the phone booth.
Yes. See, he's gone from keeping range in that round one to seeing Stan gas and instantly go into the phone booth by fighting. So maybe that's what he's relying on against Liam. He wants Liam to guess, then he moves in.
And that just displays
combinations.
And that just displays the fight IQ of Ed, right? We're seeing an intelligent UFC 4 fighter coming into this octagon against Liam on Saturday. Somebody who's not going to rush into something and get knocked out in 40 seconds like we saw with Ozzy. We're going to see somebody who is completely aware of their opponent's game plan and similarly what they need to do to beat it. Now we can see in round three, same thing. The pressure, the knees, the body work.
Yeah, he knows now that
Ed is
throw a big combination and end the fight, so he knows he can pressure and pick apart Stan, and this is exactly what he does. As you'll see. There's that knee again.
And obviously, another big issue is Stan's stamina management, if you will, in this fight. You can see the huge advantage that Ed has, and there's the Rock with the front kick coming in with the knee. It's just clinical is what it is. Ed smelled blood in the water and absolutely went in for the kill. Maybe he got a little crazy here, right? Maybe he threw a couple too many crazy combos, but it's undeniable how effective he is when his opponent is compromised.
Here it comes. Boom! Good night, Stanley.
Of course, Stan, a great Agro legend in his own right. Looking forward to seeing him back in the cage. But you can see there, that was Ed's night. That is Ed's belt. The throne has been claimed. And, I as good of his fight is with Stan, right? there are some fights that he's had that give different looks, right? You look at the Nothing But MMA, our boy Mystic Max, he comes out a lot more aggressive, if you will. The distance management was a little bit abandoned because he wanted to stand and bang, right? In this fight, Ed did choose a boxer powerhouse class, so maybe he felt that the power was going to be on his side.
I think the ability to switch it up is what stands Kobe out from the rest at 55, which is what won him his belt. Being able to fight against his opponent, not always have the same game plan no matter the opponent.
Absolutely agree with you. About changing it up, right? It's about having the ability to change it up. Some fighters, right, they get stuck in one style and then they get patched out. And with Ed, what I love to see is how he can be that adaptable. As you can see here, this was sort of the end of the fight. Nothing But MMA sort of gets in this sprawl position. Stamina gone. Ed going in for the guillotine finish. Again, as a boxer powerhouse, Jamie, as a submission specialist yourself, having a class like more of a striker, getting a submission finish, is that uncommon?
It is very uncommon. As you can see, for most of this sub, he's actually behind. And then he gets the third transition, I believe, in the guillotine, and that's it. The bar overtakes. And to actually have that submission offense as a boxer is a good asset to your game. You can really put Liam off, maybe following Kobe to the ground if he knocks him down.
Absolutely agree with you. Wouldn't that be a sight? Ed knocking Liam down. What a hypothetical. But to wrap up our analysis on the co-main, Jamie, getting your thoughts.
End of that sub, because I may have not clicked on it. Sorry, guys. Just watch your end of that sub just so you can see some of the sub offense.
And you can see again the stamina of Mystic Max is just melted.
Right, so
beautiful.
Rounding off the co-main, I feel like I think Kobe uses his range and uses that body knee to maybe stop the sway back uppercut of Liam, and it could really pay off.
I completely agree with you. I think pressuring and draining the stamina are going to be the two big keys to victory against a guy like Liam, who hasn't been tested in that regard yet, right? I don't think that he's had someone put that game plan against him because he's viewed as this just complete dangerous guy on the feet, right? Who would pressure the 8-0 Liam? I'd have to imagine that the champ might try it. And again, in Liam's side of things, right, paths to victory for him, it's the striking. It's keeping it upstairs. It's working the body and then going down with the hooks, the straights. I'd like to see leg kicks out of either competitor, really. I mean, they're so effective and impactful in this game and can really change it just like that. I'd like to see somebody implement at least a little bit of a leg kicking game. Could be Liam, could be Ed. Honestly, with their styles, it would fit in both of theirs, their realms pretty equally.
Yeah, I agree. It's an unpredictable fight, 50-50 all the way. It'd be amazing to see the outcome.
Talking about a fight that may also be a 50-50, right? Moving on to the main event, Chad versus Raw Dog 2. I think that Raw Dog has definitely made the adjustments potentially necessary to knock off the 11-1 pound for pound number one Chad.
Yeah, I believe in his past two fights, he came out and showed that he can wrestle from the top, and that he's not completely lost like he did look against Chad in some situations. He did do well, don't get me wrong, but in some situations he looked absolutely lost on the ground. And he's come out of fights in the crucifix position, so what can you say?
It was interesting, right? It was interesting watching back their first fight. I mean, we had so much to say about it, but it really was some transitions on the ground, some positions that Raw Dog was in. He seemed very adept, right? Very capable of getting out of it. And then there were some others where his fight IQ just maybe seemed to fail him. As you can see here, he gets the half guard, gets back to the full guard. Chad, of course, going back to the patented, ground and pound that got him so many wins in this division. Going over to side control, trying to get that crucifix, gets the deny, and boom, gets right back up from side control. Which on a guy like Chad, Jamie, I got to think that's pretty impressive.
That is, to get up at all against Chad is brilliant. But I think this is where Raw Dog wins this fight on the feet. He showed glimpses, but obviously this is a 3 round fight compared to the 5 round fight we'll be seeing on Saturday. So Raw Dog will have a lot more time on the feet, but he lands 2 front kicks in a row, I believe, just coming up right now. I believe there's one look. There's the second one come now. There's his rock.
That's the rock.
And
again, Chad being rocked, I mean, who can remember times in fights when Chad, of all people, is rocked or stunned? It's crazy. And then, of course, you see Chad go right back to the wrestling. But that's, I completely agree with you, right? Raw Dog should really try to leverage the striking more because he knows exactly what Chad wants to do. I mean, we've got a clip later in this episode of Chad 18 seconds in the fight taking it to the ground, right? We know what Chad wants to do. So if Raw Dog can keep it up and maybe cut down the movement. You saw that right before those front kicks. Chad was just dancing around in front of him. I know I harped on leg kicks 2 minutes ago, but I'm gonna bring it back up and reiterate. Cutting down a guy's movement is the best way of creating a stationary object to the point where you can just tee off with whatever you want to throw. But I will say that there were so many instances with Raw Dog where he attempted a sub, right, when he really shouldn't have. Kind of was an improper time to put a submission, especially on a guy like Chad. We can see here he's going for the Kimura with 30 seconds left. Maybe just this is his way of ending the fight. But you've got to think, Raw Dog, if you're in a 3-rounder with a guy like Chad, you're likely going to be down at least 1, most likely 2 rounds. Try to put a staple. Posture up, get some ground and pound. Don't go for a sub to write it out because you can see there was no way that Raw Dog was going to finish that submission. It just seems that there's some instances where he acts maybe more emotionally than he should in the cage. Jamie, what are your thoughts about trying to close out a 3-rounder with a submission?
Yeah, I believe if he's on top with Chad on low stand with 30 seconds left in the fight, when he knows he's down on the scorecards, I can't see why he puts a Kimura in. When you mentioned with other fights, I think that's just the main factor. I just don't know. I think he was lost. I think he knew he'd lost and he just didn't know how to finish Chad.
And, what we've seen in Raw Dog's other fights, right? We watched the JB fight. There were 4 separate times where Raw Dog went for a submission and his submission offense just really wasn't there. He couldn't complete the submissions. And there were times where he didn't bail on them in an effective window when he should, right? Because then he ends up in a more disadvantageous position.
I think Raw Dog lacked the finishing mindset once he'd known he was down 2 rounds. He put 2 submissions in, but I think they were empty submissions. I think he was just trying to ride the fight out at that point.
Empty submissions. Let's see if he can load them up potentially Saturday night. Moving on to Chad's camp. Again, we've talked about the takedown 18 seconds in. That's how he started round 1. He started round 2 with another takedown about 15 seconds in. This guy's game plan is just completely expected at this point. He's a champion, been champion in multiple different divisions on multiple different consoles. I mean, we all know what Chad's going to bring to the table, but nobody has been able to stop it at this point in time. Jamie, what do you think is the answer to a guy like Chad with his pressuring, with his takedown threat?
I think Raw Dog showed glimpses of the right. If he's going to take you down, the key is to show submission threat, but not how Raw Dog was implemented in the first fight. I think if you can keep Chad worried about being on the feet, there it is, take down 12 seconds into the round. I think if you can keep Chad worried on the ground, he's not going to take you down. If he's fighting a high-level submission guy, I think that's the key to beating him.
Give him something to worry about. I completely agree with you. And as we can see here again, Chad just getting back to the basics here with the ground and pound. Yep. It's such a scary guy to fight, really. I mean, he just is you don't want to be on bottom with Chad on top. It's just that simple. But looking into a couple of other Chad's fights, right? We watched back the Fro fight, and there was a couple things that we took away from it. One of which being that he's way more active when he's in the Vanguard kind of class. He just feels more comfortable. I have to imagine because, again, like we talked about earlier, that the chin of the Dominator has been kind of negated a bit. And so Chad's adapted. He's adopted more of a striking kind of style. I mean, we know that he's got the kickboxing tournament victory within his belt. We know that he's got the striking credentials. And we saw that in the Fro fight. There were a number of instances where he would rock Fro or knock him down. I Remember, there was one instance of a spinning back kick counter to a spinning back kick that knocked Fro down. I mean, I'd like to see more of the striking out of Chad.
Yeah, I believe now due to the nerf of Dominator, Chad will stand a lot more. I feel like he's felt Raw Dog stand up as well, and I don't think he was too worried by it. I think he just wanted to win that 3-round fight to get back on the run for the title. But I believe with a Vanguard, Chad will see a lot more kick heavy game. We know he liked his front kicks as Dominator, so I think he'll use a lot of spinning kicks, body kicks with Vanguard.
And I will say there is still the X factor of Chad not being 100% on Xbox. We don't know whether or not he is comfortable at this point with the console shift. I mean, what we saw in the Fro fight, there were some instances where he was getting touched up. There was a couple lead hook to an uppercut that would rock Chad a little bit, right? We did have the stamina drain body kick that Chad vehemently says wasn't a stun. I agree with him, but at the same time, it's you got in that position, and Fro was able to almost take advantage of it, which is, if I'm Chad, concerning.
It's definitely concerning. Although Fro didn't land a lot of strikes, there's a rock from Chad. Beautiful spinning back kick. But yeah.
And, as much as I love Fro, man, he's such an entertaining competitor. His game plan coming into this fight with Chad really didn't do a lot for me, right? He was very front kick heavy. He was very spinning back elbow oriented and not really setting a lot of these big stamina draining shots up. I would have liked more of a fundamental approach, which may be something that Raw Dog brings into this one, right? A kind of basic just working the combos, not going for the large KO kind of shots.
With Chad implementing the high Vanguard game as well, we will see here in this. The chin's not the best, and also he hasn't got a lot of punch power. And you'll see here from Fro putting the pressure on, eventually getting a decent rock after a double uppercut, I believe. I think if I'm Warlock, I'm watching this and seeing that I can get Chad's guard down in the later rounds. Obviously, we're in the 5-round fight this time. This is late in round 3. As long as he keeps his stamina up and he doesn't get submitted or finished in the first couple of rounds, I feel like late on, Chad sometimes does show weakness. There it is, look, left hook to the
there you go.
Back uppercut. Chad can be clipped, and Rodog can throw hands. So I believe
the God can bleed. But I think what's good about Chad is he really doesn't, once he is rocked, he gets himself right out of that position. You saw him just take a big step back, remove himself from any distance, any striking distance, which if I'm Raw Dog, I have to jump on the opportunity a little bit and then expect that the takedown threat is likely going to be there. We all know what Chad wants to do when he's stunned, right? He's going to shoot, get back to a realm he's comfortable with. So understanding that, being cognizant of that, could be a very real path to victory for Raw Dog.
Yeah. Chad's path to victory is to be Chad and win, like he usually does. And Raw Dog is maybe trying, in that first round, when the inevitable takedown comes, show him some sort of defense on the ground that might force Chad to stand up, and then when it's standing up, show he's got hands and actually throw some strikes. He's seen now Fro lit him up, so maybe go and practice any combinations. I don't know. Chad's only lost once, and that's because we've seen him get knocked out by Jordan. So he has been knocked out once. And it's not
and I
unrealistic.
think the key, what might be a key for Raw Dog as well, and this is something that Fro didn't really implement, or a lot of people that I haven't really seen implement against Chad, is body strikes. You see a lot of head kicks, right? The front head kick got blocked consistently. I think what Raw Dog could do is work to that body, because then that's going to lower the stamina. That's going to give him some advantages. If he chooses to go for a submission-heavy game plan like we've seen him try before, you need to get that stamina as low as possible. And body strikes, mixing up to the legs, right, trying to limit that movement, I feel are best paths to victory for Raw Dog.
Don't forget, in Raw Dog's last few fights, obviously we haven't got the clips here available to us, but he got him in Crucifix, and he finished from Crucifix, and he did also get Chad in one point in their first fight in Crucifix. If you can get that again, maybe initiate the takedown. Maybe that's what. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe he needs to put Chad on his back and make Chad work. You never know. It's one of them fights where Raw Dog got dominated the first time and just needs to come out as a new fighter and put that behind him. Hopefully that's not in the back of his head the whole time. Maybe he can put Chad on his back and put him in Crucifix and maybe get the finish from there. We've never seen Chad on his back at all, so we don't know what it's like.
Truly is the mysterious nature of this sport, right, Jamie? You never know what's going to happen. You can analyze past fights, you can try to make predictions and see what could work to either fighter's benefit, but the reality is you don't know unless you know. That's why you got to be there Saturday night, 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, 6 p.m. GMT. Agro 35, Chad versus Roderick for the 145-pound title. Ed Cobby versus Liam for the Xbox 155-pound title. Jamie, I'm excited. Are you excited?
I'm very excited. Don't forget about the rest of the card. BetPick making a return against Gregman, who's also returning on the main card, and many other fights that you will not want to miss. And don't forget,
Have to mention War Thompson opening up the main card as well. I'm a huge fan of Thompson. I know he's one of the biggest fan favorites that we've got. I can't agree. This card is stacked from top to bottom. You don't want to miss it.